What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla and the overall market. I'm also going to talk about some big news that's coming out involving some news involving Tesla's FSD approval and how things are looking very, very different compared to the past. Just know that I'm not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention an 8.1% APY non invested cash. The offer ends very soon in just 2 weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with Tesla. So, Tesla's doing a good job at holding up. It's broken this all time high resistance at this $430 area, and Tesla's making new all time highs from here. Now, it's forming these nice cups continuing to break out, but the question is, why did Tesla break out like this? What news came out? So I want to focus on the news first, and I'll break down more details about why Tesla looks more bullish. But there's a major piece of news that's coming out. We're seeing a lot of headlines and news sources reporting that the Trump administration's team is suggesting that maybe eliminating a crash reporting rule opposed by Tesla, backed by Elon Musk, which could hinder the government's capacity to examine safety in automated driving systems. Now, critics argue the opposite, that the government's main objective here is not just for safety, but it's just to criticize Tesla, and it gives Tesla a very, very bad name and doesn't really report FSD properly. So there's different ways to look at this. I want to be very unbiased when I go about this. So what's happening is reports suggest, and this was originally reported by Reuters, that the Trump administration wants to remove a crash reporting requirement widely opposed by Tesla. And this could weaken the government's ability to investigate, regulate, and look into the safety of vehicles equipped with automated driving systems. That's what one side is arguing. This Reuters document is what's reporting this, at least thus far. And there's going to be these policy strategies to change a lot of policy involving FSD and such in the first 100 days. Now, without the data, the NHTSA is arguing that it's going to struggle to identify crash patterns that may indicate safety issues. Despite the support from different industries to rescind the rule, its defenders insist that collecting the crash data is vital for the outgoing oversights when it comes to different things like that. Now, on the other hand, despite this, right, the NHTSA is not happy about this. I did see another perspective about this and why Tesla could be opposing this rule. Now, I didn't hear directly from Elon Musk about this, but the regulation was introduced back in 2021, once again mandating the automakers to report crashes involved with automated systems within 30 seconds of an accident. So that's very important. And then the issue is that I didn't see Tesla publicly criticize the rule, but there are sources that are claiming that they oppose it. And then Elon Musk has implied that as well in the past. I haven't heard him directly call it out specifically, but we have heard him tweet things about that, about the NHTSA and such. Now, for those out there, just know that since June of 2021, the NHTSA logged about 4,000 crashes involving automated driving systems, and Tesla reported about 1,500 of them. Two of them were fatal, unfortunately. So it is what it is. However, despite that potentially happening, the thing is, what Tesla would argue is that the NHTSA is not necessarily reporting the data properly because they don't assess the automated driving safety features like that. And by simply reporting accidents and painting it as something that's very dangerous, it doesn't give us the full comprehensive picture. So there's two ways of looking at this, right? Is it good that the government has this control over this data? They see everything, they report everything to the public, and then they continue to regulate. Or would it be better if they don't have that control, giving Tesla the ability to continue to improve without getting the harsh criticism and the possible misconstrued data that paints FSD very differently? The bottom line is this, okay? FSD is not 100% safe. I'm going to say that 100% clearly. Okay, it's not 100% perfect. There's going to be some instances that happen. There could be some accidents that happen sometimes. Okay, right? That's something that's going to happen. But despite the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of usages that are going to happen over the next few years, the amount of accidents is not that high. It's not like there's a million accidents. It's just there are thousands at least that are being reported. So the way to look at this is that the majority of the time, there's a lot of safety features that are incorporated with FSD that allow for braking, identifying red lights, identifying pedestrians, and the list goes on, that are going to be used to help it improve. But at the same time, there are going to be accidents. And with the accidents that happen, how is the data going to be used in that case? Some argue that the data that's being collected is used to absolutely criticize Tesla. They paint FSD as something that's never going to work. It's dangerous and this and that. And there's other ways you could look at it. That's one argument that could be made. But at the same time, the NHTSA could argue that they want to do this just for the safety of users. So it could go either way. I'm going to make that very, very clear. But if the NHTSA is more stringent when it comes to these policies and regulations, what's going to happen is getting FSD approved is going to take much, much, much longer. So you have to remember that. What I do want to say is that Tesla should announce and disclose that FSD is not perfect. So if you're driving using FSD, you have to pay attention to the road, be able to catch the steering wheel if something happens, just in case, right? That's the most important thing about that. However, at the same time, you have to remember that it's getting better as time goes on. And the majority of the time when people use FSD, they do not get into accidents, right? It's not like most of the time it happens. It's more rare, if anything, because the technology is improving and there's a lot of safety features. So I believe, and this is what I think, I still think that the crashes that happen should be reported just so that users have an idea. But we can't necessarily just pin everything on Tesla because they're known for being the most criticized for this. There's other companies that have automated systems that are nowhere near as developed. And then other companies also have accidents, and that's not getting reported the same way. So you could argue that Tesla's getting treated very differently. It could go either way. But my point is this. I would argue that yes, the crashes should be reported, but at the same time, the successful usages should also be reported so people have a good understanding of how successful FSD is becoming. So, for example, if they just talk about how, oh, there was 1,000 crashes with FSD, this and that, yeah, it is. It could be the truth, but how many usages were there? How many drives took place? If they tell us that, hey, there were 4 million drives in the last, so and so years, just hypothetically, for example, and out of those drives, we saw about this many million miles being driven, and out of those millions of miles, there were about this many accidents. I think that's a more efficient way that they should go about this. So, if anything, I would have liked it if the NHTSA had a unbiased perspective and they try to be unbiased with their data, with the way they report things. They disclose the full picture. So that could have made things a lot easier, but because of the way that they report things, I would still like things to be reported in a way where we get the full comprehensive picture. But in my honest view, as a Tesla investor and someone that trades Tesla, you have to look at this as in some ways a good piece of news because it does allow for the approval of FSD a lot faster. But how about the safety requirement of it? And I think that's for you guys to decide. I know FSD is going to eventually be a lot safer than normal people driving, and we're going to eventually see Tesla achieve autonomy. I really believe that. I think they're going to be safer than normal human drivers, but we're not quite there yet. So transitioning to that phase is what's going to be a lot more tricky. So I give you guys my perspective. I think that all the data should be reported, not just crashes and fatalities, which are very rare, if anything, if you just look at the data. But at the same time, Tesla should also report, the entire picture. I think the NHTSA should do that as well. The entire picture should be reported. How many miles are being driven? How many trips were made? How many, so on and so forth, right? And then how many accidents are there per how many thousands of miles are being driven, just for example, or how many millions of miles. Anyways, I hope that's as clear as possible. That's like what my view is. So if anything, this is technically still bullish for Tesla because it increases the odds that FSD is going to get approved faster. And then that's going to help the robotaxi get approved quicker. And then that's going to, benefit Tesla, bringing in a lot more revenue. And it's going to be getting us closer to autonomy a lot quicker. Sure, you could argue that. But you guys can have your own views about this. If you don't think it's the safest approach, that's your opinion. I respect your opinion, of course. Like I said before, I think everything should be reported in terms of all the data, just so that we have a more comprehensive picture of it. And we'll see what happens at least as time goes on. But just know that this is not officially what's happening. This is just something that's being suggested. So don't necessarily look at this as something that's 100% objective. This is guaranteed to happen. We're still waiting to see what is being done with these approvals and etc. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, that's enough with me ranting on about FSD and like this new piece of news. I just want to say this: when it comes to other pieces of data, Nvidia is down about 2.25%. The rest of the market was in the red. Rest Tesla was green, about 4.34% to the upside. For next week, on Monday, we have PMI data that's coming out, giving us more insights on manufacturing and services. And then for Tuesday, we have some manufacturing numbers, which could cause some volatility. And then the main time for data is going to be Wednesday when we have the notorious FOMC meeting. It's going to be right here when Jerome Powell starts giving a speech and they announce their interest rate decisions. So that's going to be very important for us. For Thursday, I would argue that GDP is going to be the most significant thing. That's going to cause some volatility. And then Friday, we have PCE inflationary data. So every day we have some data, especially Wednesday to Friday, are going to be very significant. The market has more puts expiring for next Friday. There's not much going on with that. And then this is what earnings are going to be looking like for next week. It's very minor, mainly just retail, nothing too crazy. And the market remains more neutral. We'll have to see if we become more fearful or not. So give that some time. Greed is making up the majority of sentiments. And then the put to call option ratios at greed. This is starting to go up a little bit. So we're starting to see a little bit more put buying in the markets. And we'll see what happens at least as time goes on. With that being said, what else do I see at least for this moving forward? Well, in my opinion, I think that Tesla's very bullish right now, especially because there's a possibility of lots of regulations, being lifted possibly. So that's what's helping this thing push even more and all this hype involving AI. Now, what generally happens is you do see a little bit of a dip to retest this like all-time high. So we could touch 440, dip back down to about the previous all-time high at 430 before it tries to continue to push as the most likely possibility. That's what I would be looking for based off psychological levels and what tends to happen. So if we hit 440, we could come back down to retest this. And if we hold support, we could just start to continue to break out like this early next week. As Tesla remains more bullish, we're breaking out very, very nicely. Now, SPY, on the other hand, has this range right here. We're stuck between the 602 to 603 area support, and then we have resistance around the 608 zone, give or take 1 point above or below. So what's happening is we had a high here at 609. We came down, made a lower high at 608, came down, made a lower high at 607. So I do anticipate it's going to try to push here, but we'll be watching to see if we can break past our 50 EMA. And if we push and get a rejection again, if we lose 602, then yes, we'll be looking for a bigger rug pull to about $598 or below. And that could cause some downside for the markets. We are looking a little bit more bearish in terms of this trend, especially when you look at ES. And if we lose the support for confirmation, that could cause some downside. There's no confirmation of us losing the 602 area. So overall, we're just stuck in a range for the time being, going back and forth and back and forth. However, if we end up losing support around that 602 zone, we could be dipping even lower. So I think there is a possibility of the market dipping if we lose support and get confirmation after we get this, like if we get a bounce and a dip. But it could just be a very, very temporary pullback, which kind of resembles this right here. So if I go back on SPY's chart real quick, you guys will see that we were at $567 a share. Then we started this rally for about 2 weeks, right? And then what happened is we came down, made a lower high, just like how we came down here, made a lower high. And then we got this phase where we kind of just dumped a little bit for a couple of days only to get bought back up. My point is, even if we get some kind of pullback, I'm not saying it's going to happen. We need confirmation of a break of 602 first. But even if we do get that break and we end up dipping down to the 590s, all right, no big deal. I think that SPY will just get bought back up towards the end of the year anyways, just like this. I think that we're still set up for that big rally. So even if we get some kind of pullback, we could still bounce very, very strongly. It could just be a very temporary thing. So that's my view of why I'm not necessarily like a perma bear. But going into next week, we'll be watching to see if SPY loses 602 or so to turn more bearish. ES could also be dipping to about the 6,040 area. If that fails us, we're looking for 6020, then 6,000 flat. We also have resistance at 6,060, so we'll have to see how we go here. But look for a small dip, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not, at least as time goes on. For NVIDIA, we're on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs right here, so we could be dipping closer to about this support at 132 to 131, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not from there. There might be a small dip here, but this is the support it likes to get bought back up at, and we're holding support so far, so it could be a small dip before it attempts to rebound. Looking at Bitcoin, we're still bullish. We're going to be looking for a test of about 102,500 most likely, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get from there, at least moving forward. I think we're holding up quite nicely, so we'll see how it goes. For others out there, we have NQ. NQ is dipping right here, so we're going to be looking for a test of about 21,692, and we'll see if we bounce or not off of this. If we dip a little bit lower, we'll have to see if we bounce between 21,692 and 21,537. Could go either way, but whether or not we get the bounce depends on different factors. I believe that there's a good chance that we test one of these supports, then we try to rebound. So there could be a small dip on NQ and also the QQQ to retest 526 or so, but then we could bounce again as this thing is still making higher highs and higher lows. There's no sign of major weakness quite yet. Apple might retest 246. If that fails us, we look for 244, and then we'll see if we bounce or not. So please keep that in mind. The IWM Russell 2000 is dipping right here towards 232 to 231. We'll see if we bounce or not off of this, but there might be a little bit of a dip coming. So we'll see what kind of reaction we get, but be very, very patient nonetheless. Coinbase has this gap to fill, so it could be dipping close to about 303, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. Amazon might be retesting 226. If that does not hold, this imbalance takes us down to about the 225 area. And I think in that range, it could attempt a rebound, but look for a little bit more downside from here. Meta as well might dip a little bit more before it tries to bounce, so we'll have to see how that goes. Um, Microsoft might retest 446. We'll have to see if that holds. I do have one concern. There's like a left shoulder here, a head and a right shoulder, so that could lead to a dip back down to about 443 if we lose that support. So there could be a dip coming right over here before it tries to rebound, so keep that in mind. And Google might continue to downtrend towards our 20 EMA at 189. So it might be dipping to 189 before it tries to bounce. So please keep that in mind. Anyways, that is it for my video. I thank you all so much for listening. As far as the market goes, Tesla remains in a very, very strong uptrend. It looks very, very, very bullish. We could be looking for a test of 440. If we get a little dip there, we could retest the all-time high at 430 after that, and then we could just bounce again and just continue to push for 450. I hope that's as clear as possible. We're still very, very bullish. So if you guys have more thoughts and opinions on this news involving, what's happening with the crash reporting rules, that's your choice, guys. I already gave you guys my opinion of this about how I still think that the full comprehensive picture should still be reported, but it's your choice. Whatever you guys want to believe, I will respect your guys' opinions and your beliefs, even if they're different from mine. And regardless of that, if anything, this technically would be bullish for Tesla because it increases the odds of less regulations and a faster transition to FSD for us to see autonomous technology. So just wanted to call that out. Let's just hope for the best for everyone out there. And I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy your weekend. I'll be back tomorrow with another update. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day and peace out.